Good afternoon and welcome. This is News First, where the people come first. I'm Azra San. Let's start off with a look at the headlines for this afternoon.
New cabinet sworn in today. 17 cabinet ministers appointed. People continue to protest, demanding solutions. Lanka IOC increases fuel prices again. Long queues to purchase fuel continue. Court reissues a summons on Cabral. Travel ban extended to 2nd of May.
A new cabinet of ministers took courts before President Gotabaya Rajapaksa this morning after 3 weeks since the previous cabinet resigned. Now, the previous cabinet of ministers resigned on the 3rd of April following mounting pressure from the people who called on the government to resign since proper solutions were not provided to resolve the crisis situation in the country. Accordingly, 17 new cabinet ministers were sworn in today at the President's office in Colombo. Dinesh Gunawardena as the Minister of Public Administration, Internal Affairs, Provincial Councils and Local Government, Douglas Devananda as the Minister of Fisheries, Dr. Ramesh Patrana as the Minister of Education and Plantation, Prasanna Ranatunga as the Minister of Public Security and Tourism, Dilu Mamunugama as the Minister of Transport and Industries, Kanaka Herath as the Minister of Highways, Vidura Vikramanayaka as the Minister of Labour, Janaka Wakumbara as the Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, Shahan Semasinghe as the Minister of Trade and Samruddhi Development, Mohan Priyadarshana De Silva as the Minister of Water Supply, Vimalabira Desanayaka as the Minister of Wildlife and Forest Resources Conservation, Kanchana Vijayasekara as the Minister of Power and Energy, Thenuku Vidanagamage as the Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs, Dr. Nalika Godaheva as the Minister of Mass Media, Professor Channa Jayasumana as the Minister of Health, Nazir Ahmed as the Minister of Environment. Finally, Pramita Bandara Thenakon as the Minister of Ports and Shipping. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa addressed the newly appointed cabinet of ministers today.
මම ජේෂ්ඨත්වය සලකන්නේ නැතුව නව ඇමතිවරුන්
I have appointed the new cabinet without considering seniority. Being a cabinet of minister does not mean it's a privilege. It is a huge responsibility. I'm requesting you all as ministers, do not use any privileges. What I'm expecting you is to dedicate yourself to a truthful, clean ruling. Also, the institutions under you should be corrupt-free and focused on servicing the people. Today, most of the government institutions are undergoing a huge financial crisis. You must fix those issues. Today's crisis is a great opportunity for us to do the system change the people are requesting. You have received that opportunity and I'm requesting the younger generation to assist.
පවතින මේ අරුබුදය ඒ ජනතාව ඉල්ලපු මේ සිස්ටම් චේන්ජ් එක කරන්න හොඳ අවස්ථාවක්. තමුන්නාන්සලට ඒ අවස්ථාව ලැබිලා තියෙනවා. ඒකම මම ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා මේ තරුණයන්ගෙන් ඒට උපකාර කරන්නට කියලා.
The peaceful demonstration staged by the people opposite the President's office at the Golfers Green in Colombo are continuing today as well. Now, according to our reporters on location, people from all parts of the country have gathered at the location. We're now being joined by Newsfirst Ahmed Buso for the latest. Ahmed?
I'm currently opposite the President's office in Golfers, while the protest staged by the general public continues for the 10th consecutive day. Now, what's special about this particular protest is that none of these protesters are affiliated to any political party. These protesters are from all walks of life. We have the disabled, we have people from multiple communities representing the diverse community in Sri Lanka. Now, when you talk about today, today is a weekday, it's a Monday, but despite the reopening of schools, that does not seem to be a decrease in the number of protesters. Now, when you talk about the traffic situation here in this place, due to the protesters protesting on either side of the road, we can see a slight traffic congestion in this area. So, stay tuned in News First as I begin the latest in regard. For the News First team, I'm Mohammed Buso, reporting to you live from opposite the President's office in Golfers.
The people continue to protest opposite President's office in Colombo today as well. Meanwhile, information technology engineer Lalit Nandakumara concluded a 24-hour Satyagraha campaign he launched yesterday. Today, I'm handing over the baton I brought so far to Sajit Maduranga, who is breaking the record of throwing the javelin. This is not any private struggle, but a struggle of Sri Lanka as a whole. So I request everyone to show their support towards this cause.
හැම හතර දික් භාගයේම ඉන්න හැමෝම වෙනුවෙන් කරන අරගලයක් මේක අපේ පෞද්ගලික අරගලයක් නෙවෙයි මේ වෙනුවෙන් හැමෝගෙම සහයෝගය දෙන්න කියලා මම ඉල්ලනවා අපි ක්‍රීඩකයන් විදියට ජාත්‍යන්තර මට්ටමට ගිහලා ඉතාමත් ආඩම්බරෙන් ශ්‍රී ලංකාව
As athletes, we were proud to say the name of Sri Lanka, but if the system continues, we won't be able to tell the name. Imagine how the generation after us be able to tell our name Sri Lanka. So we hope everyone will continue to remain with us, united as one in this struggle.
අපිත් එක්ක එකතු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ වගේම අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා සියලු දෙනාම අද අපිත් එක්ක එකතු වෙයි කියලා.
Thereafter, athlete Sajit Maduranga commenced the Satyagraha campaign. A crowd including artists, scholars and professionals joined the protest today. A large crowd continued to gather at the protest site without any political affiliations.
Protests were staged at various locations in the country last night and today in support of the protest staged opposite the President's office. A protest at the location dubbed Gota Gogama was staged in Kandy today as well. A tense situation was reported between the protesters and police when the protesters attempted to install a platform. Meanwhile, senior citizens joined the Gota Gogama protest site at the Kandy town last night. The protest staged by the people in Gaul continues today as well. A library was also opened today for the protesters. People staged protest in Mathura as well. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan expatriates continued their protest in solidarity with their fellow Sri Lankans at home today as well. Protests were staged in Berlin and Dusseldorf in Germany.
Deswegen stellen wir uns heute lautstark hinter unsere Brüder und Schwestern in Sri Lanka und sagen, Gota, go home.
The Colombo Chief Magistrates Court reissued summons on Ajit Niwad Cabral, the former governor of the central bank, informing him to be present in court on the 2nd of May 2022. Now, the overseas travel ban on Ajit Niwad Cabral was also extended to the 2nd of May 2022. The order was made by Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakunawala today, as the former CBSL governor failed to appear in court as per the summons issued on the 7th of April. The overseas travel ban on Cabral was also extended to the 2nd of May. The order was made by Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakunawala on Monday. Lanka IOC has decided to increase its retail selling prices of petrol by 35 rupees per litre and diesel by 75 rupees per litre with effect from midnight yesterday.
The revised LIOC prices per litre are as follows. Petrol 92 octane is now at 338 rupees. Petrol 95 octane is now at 367 rupees. Petrol Euro 3 is now at 347 rupees. Auto diesel is at 289 rupees. In a statement, the LIOC said the rupee devaluation by more than 60% during the last 1 month since 7th March 2020 compelled again to increase its prices of fuel. Long queues were observed across the island last night to purchase fuel, while several filling stations were closed due to the non-availability of fuel stocks. People who arrived at the cooperative filling station in Kantale engaged in a protest by blocking the Trincomalee-Colombo main road since the owner of the fuel station failed to issue fuel. After the intervention of the police, 150 rupees worth of fuel was issued to motorbikes. Fuel was issued at the filling station in Dehiyathakandi after 5 days today, resulting in long queues to purchase fuel. People who stayed in queues to purchase fuel at a filling station in Deyandara showed dissent after they were informed that the fuel stocks are over. After the intervention of the police, measures were taken to distribute fuel. Long queues were observed at filling stations in Kandy and its suburbs. Our correspondent noted that filling stations in the town did not have diesel stocks. Long queues were observed at filling stations around Pinnadua in Gaul.
Sri Lanka Private Bus Owners Association says the minimum bus fares will have to be increased to 40 rupees owing to the current situation in the country.
Certain
areas in the country only have IOC filling stations, so bus owners are compelled to purchase fuel from these stations. Now again a shortage reported. The filling stations that had stocks yesterday don't have them today. Certain filling stations have stopped the distribution of fuel, assuming that the prices will be increased. The biggest issue is the amendment of the national policy is due in 2 months, at which point minimum fare is expected to be doubled, which means the 20 rupees minimum fare can increase to 40 rupees. This is an issue that the general public or the factories cannot live with. Changing people will not resolve this crisis. The gas storage complex in Kerawala that was closed due to the new year was open today. However, our correspondent noted only 2,500 gas cylinders were issued to the market today.
I
The Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka says the duration of today's power cuts has been reduced to 3 hours and 30 minutes from the earlier announced 4 hours and 20 minutes. The decision to reduce the power cut duration was reached as the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has agreed to supply the required fuel for power generation.
A protest march commenced from Wadua today.
The protest march commenced aiming to form a people-centric government. The protest march that commenced in Beruwala yesterday will continue for 3 days. The march reached Moratuwa town today. The protesters are expected to arrive in Colombo on the last day of the protest. Today, by appointing a cabinet, they are trying to put an interim solution to the issues. This cabinet cannot provide a solution to the fuel, milk powder and gas shortage as well as solution to the power cuts. They are just establishing a cabinet like a carpenter in Moratuwa making furniture. They establish cabinets and change. They cannot think beyond this group.
All government and government-approved private schools will commence academic activities from today. But the Minister of Education, Dinesh Gunawardena, said the decision to add an extra 1 hour to the school timetable with effect from today has been suspended.
Our correspondents noted despite the commencement of academic activities, the students' turnover was very less in Kandy. It was also reported that the students' turnover in Colombo schools was also less. A similar situation was observed at schools in Ambalangoda. A less student turnover was also observed at schools in Gaul. Our correspondent further noted that the arrival of school buses was also comparatively low.
The government should at least distribute fuel based on a coupon system, or else it would affect the school transportation system. If this continues for 3 to 4 days or more, we won't be able to bring these children to school.
Meanwhile, the Education Ministry says students will be admitted to Grade 1 for the academic year of 2022.
In some international news, now the death count from floods that have battered South Africa climbed above 440 yesterday as abating rains allowed rescue operations to accelerate after one of the deadliest storms in living memory.
Torrential rains that started lashing on the southeastern coastal region last weekend quickly triggered heavy floods and landslides that smashed into Durban city and surrounding areas, pulling them with buildings and people. By yesterday, 443 people, including 2 police emergency workers, had died from the raging floods. At least 63 other people are still missing and are feared dead after the floodwaters engulfed the region, trashing the beaches and debris.
According to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, the Ukraine crisis could plunge more than 1/5 of humanity, or up to 1.7 billion people, into poverty and hunger.
Guterres told foreign media, quote, "We all see the tragedy unfolding in Ukraine, but beyond its borders, the war has launched a silent assault on the developing world. The crises could plunge up to 1.7 billion people, more than 1/5 of humanity, into poverty and hunger on a scale not seen in decades," end quote. Guterres said Ukraine and Russia account to 30% of the world's production of wheat and barley, 1/5 of all corn, and more than half of all sunflower oil. specifying that Russia and Ukraine account for over a third of the wheat imported to the 45 least developed countries. The UN Secretary General said that the Ukraine crisis is blocking grain exports and disrupting supply chains, causing prices to skyrocket.
In some sports news, David Miller rescued Gujarat Titans from the jaws of defeat against the spirited Chennai Super Kings at the 29th match of this year's edition of Indian Premier League. And that's a wrap of this edition of Lunchtime News. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mazra Hassan. Take care and have yourself a very good day.